This is always the case, unless you live in places where there is no winter. Every February is terrible, but that February was the worst of all, and the March that followed was even worse. The worst February on record started with 2 weeks where we literally didn't see the sun. Gray clouds, temperatures around -6 degrees, and the occasional inch or two of snow. Everyone looked forward to Valentine's Day as if it were their hope of salvation. That year it fell on a Thursday, and so many people took the next day off that newspaper editors wrote that the city could simply be closed on February 15th. Linda and I had big plans for Valentine's Day, just like everyone else. Like everyone else, we woke up to 2 inches of new snow, falling faster and faster. By mid-afternoon, we were both released from work while we could get somewhere. The whole city was closing down. By the time we had to get dressed for a night on the town, all the roads were closed to non-essential traffic, so we changed into cozy tracksuits. The great Valentine's Day dinner movie dance that was supposed to make up for the previous 2 weeks of non-stop nastiness turned into frozen pizza and Frozen with the kids. The only dances we did were dances with Emma and Tommy, which we sent to their bedrooms to protest, "You know there's no school tomorrow." After the kids were asleep, I sighed as I handed Linda a glass of wine. "Sorry, Linda," I said. "This is not how things were supposed to be." "It's okay, Jim. It's not your fault, and it was fun looking forward to what you had planned for us. Plus, if nothing else, I got a new dress for the party, which I haven't seen yet. You know the rule, you won't see it until you take me out in it." I looked at her, trying to imagine what she bought and how she would look in it. Linda is not classically beautiful, but she has an innate sense of style. Everything she wears not only looks great on her, but reflects who she is. She started making her own clothes in high school and still does it from time to time when she can't find just what I need in stores. She also makes many of Emma's outfits. Anyone lucky enough to see her when she's all dolled up would think she was the hottest woman in the room, but wouldn't be able to figure out why because there would be hotter women there. They'd think, "There's something about her, I'd like to get to know her better," rather than, "God, I'd give a month's salary to have a piece of this." I noticed this when I first met her, and I had no reason to change my mind. I looked at the diamond I had placed on her finger almost 10 years ago, sparkling in the firelight. "Thank you for saying yes, Linda. I love you." I raised my glass. "For us." "I love you too. For us," she replied with a smile. We sat for a few minutes in comfortable silence. "Linda, I'm sorry for being so irritable the last few days. It's not your fault or the kids' fault, and you deserve better from me. It's just this damn February and it's—" "I know, Jim. Forgive me too. I was the same way. I think bears hibernating have the right idea. We really should have slept until spring. We've all been on edge, even the kids. People at my job are much worse than you." "How is your job?" "Also." "Well, look at it this way, Jim. We have each other, we have children, we have our home, we know where our next meal is coming from." "Yeah, from Wendy's." She laughed. Our first date was the subject of a running joke between us. I met Linda in college. My parents had to stop supporting me to pay my father's medical bills, and I refused to take out loans, so after paying for tuition and books, I literally had no money. Linda was a little better off and offered to treat me or pay me equally, but I didn't agree to that, so I saved up money to take her to a decent place. She said I was stupid and that the main thing was to spend time together and get to know each other, and we could do that just as easily at Wendy's. So we went, and from then on the rest was history. We've moved up a notch since then, but still go to Wendy's sometimes for old time's sake. "Seriously, though," I said, "how do people get through times like these if they don't have love?" "Sometimes they don't care." Linda winced. Her high school boyfriend committed suicide by taking alcohol and pills on Valentine's Day night a couple of years ago. "Well, we have love and we can handle it." I put the glass down and took her hands in mine. "Happy Valentine's Day, my love." "Happy Valentine's Day, my beloved husband." We looked into each other's eyes for a moment, and then decided that we should really move to the bedroom. We got the 3-day weekend the editors thought we needed, thanks to 2 feet of snow instead of the predicted 8 inches. Everything was closed, sure, but almost no one lost power, and enough people had snowmobiles that anyone who actually needed to get somewhere could do so. Okay, the guy on our street probably didn't have a place he was supposed to be or any other excuse for all the noise and throwing snow around, but he ran out of gas on Saturday afternoon and his parents wouldn't give him any more. After that, he didn't bother anyone. Our children, of course, were delighted. Mom and Dad were home all day, there was snow to play in, pizza to eat, and movies to watch, not to mention there was no school. What more did they need? Linda and I were also happy with the situation. There was no pressure to go anywhere or do anything, and we were able to enjoy our family to our heart's content. Food was not an issue. Linda and I both grew up here, so we always made sure we had enough food in advance to share if necessary. Emma and Tommy were so tired that they didn't even complain that it was time to go to bed and slept like logs. This allowed Linda and I to enjoy moments that we would normally have to send the kids out of the house for. There were only a couple of things I didn't like about that weekend. We had hundreds of movies at home, but the kids only wanted to watch one. Cold Heart. Again and again. Okay, it's a cute little movie with good songs, but still. And Linda still didn't want to show me her dress or even let me see it. Going out in it means going out, not being at home, she said with a playful smile. What if I promise to strip you of it? Will that be close enough? Nice try, but no. She didn't give in, damn it. The real world returned early Sunday evening as snowplows rolled through our neighborhood. School and work were on Monday, and there were signs of disappointment from both children and adults as we got ready. Just before bed, Emma and Tommy walked into the living room, freshly bathed and in their nightgowns. The elder sister was, of course, the representative, standing straight and tall as best she could. Mom, Dad, this weekend was the best of our lives. Thank you for playing with us, watching our movie with us, and being together for 3 days in a row. We love you. With these words, my daughter jumped onto my lap, and my son jumped onto Linda. After they gave us the sweetest baby hugs in the world, they switched parents and did it again. I looked at Linda and her eyes were as wet as mine. We love you too, I muttered. We are so glad that you are our children. Linda and I didn't do anything out of the ordinary that night, other than making sweet love, until we felt like we had become one. We couldn't wipe the smiles off our faces the next morning, and neither could the kids. Brutal February is back, and the 3-day weekend is a memory. Even our usually calm children began to quarrel. Linda and I had just collapsed on top of each other on the living room couch after finally putting Emma and Tommy to bed when Linda's phone rang. I growled and muttered something. It's Dee, I have to answer, she said apologetically. We had a loose group of 5 couples with whom we sometimes socialized or went out together. We all met while married, so there were no awkward, when you were alone moments. We all had the same ideas about fidelity, namely, you just do it, it's not discussed or questioned. So when we went out, we could dance with each other's spouses if we wanted to change, and we knew it was safe. We were closest to Dee and her husband Dave. She and Linda were almost best friends. Linda made the "I'll try quickly" gesture and answered the phone. I saw Linda become more and more agitated as she talked with Dee. She literally glowed as she ended the call and plopped down on my lap. So what was that? My face couldn't help but reflect her smile. Well, dear husband, she smiled at me. I know you think this terrible February has gone on long enough. I'd like to drink that, I said, reaching for a glass of wine. Linda grabbed my wrist, stopping me, and firmly placed my hand on her slender waist. Much better offer. Well, we complained that not only was this the worst February in human history, but that we would have to endure an extra day of it. It didn't match the smile on her face. I told her about this. That's because Dee had a wonderful idea. The extra day of horror falls on Friday. What if we all got together, got babysitters for the kids, had a really nice dinner, and then danced at a nice club and got hotel rooms for the night? so we can have a little fun and not worry about getting home and end this terrible month on a good note. What about getting from the club back to the hotel? Don't we have to go by car? I've always been that guy who asks what could go wrong with a plan. I know it's not fun, but I really can't help it. I am this way by nature, and this is reinforced by my work. This is the best part, Jim. Do you know downtown Madison? We ate there, remember? There's a dance club down the block that some of Dave's co-workers go to. There's live music there on Friday night, and admission is free if you ate in Madison. Oh, and Phil and Jane have already arranged for Mrs. Porter to watch their kids for the night, and they say she wouldn't mind watching ours too. I'll have to think about that. I didn't really need to think, but I was hoping that if I delayed, Linda would use one of her patented, guaranteed to win female persuasion techniques to convince me. Instead, she grabbed a pillow from the sofa and hit me on the head. Okay, I thought, let's do it. But there is one condition. Which? You're going to wear the dress you bought for Valentine's Day that I still haven't seen. Your wish is my law. Her voice was hoarse, her eyes sparkled, and she was irresistible, and I didn't want to resist. The dress was blue. I can't describe what shade of blue it was. Guys can only see 8 colors, really. All I can say is that this shade of blue made her blue eyes sparkle in the dark. The dress had long sleeves and a high collar, and the hem fell below the knees, but it was not a grandmother's dress at all. The bottom edge of the hem flared and waved slightly as she walked, drawing attention. When she danced, the hem itself flirted. The smooth, tight, but not too tight fabric made you want to run your hands over it, hiding and simultaneously highlighting the slender, feminine figure underneath. Linda smiled as she slowly walked down the stairs where I waited, stunned and agape. "Dear Jim," she said, softly and sweetly. She closed my mouth with a gentle finger under my chin. I swallowed, but still couldn't speak. "It's still me, the same me as always. You don't need to flatter me, although I admit I like it when you do." I shook my head and found my voice. "You don't understand. You don't know how amazing you look. You." Words failed me. I took her thin, long-fingered hands in mine, bowed and kissed them. I looked up and saw that her eyes were shining and wet, and I noticed a slight tremor in her smile. I nodded. She understood. All 10 of us gathered in the restaurant. It was crowded on a Friday night, but we reserved a table big enough for all 10 of us to dine together. We laughed and talked, enjoying a great dinner, enjoying each other's company, and the fact that February was finally ending. Linda was the most attractive woman in the room, and I must have told her that about 6 times. I touched her arm, shoulder, or arm whenever I found a reasonable excuse. She responded in kind and looked me in the eyes. It was supposed to be an unforgettable night. We checked into our rooms before heading to the club. Linda and I have a low tolerance for alcohol, so I usually served as the designated driver. I was glad that I wouldn't have to do that this time. Not that I mind. The safety of my friends was important to me, but I was looking forward to Linda being alone with me. It looks like she had the same idea. She apologized and went to our room alone for a few minutes, returning with a meaningful smile. "I'll arrange it for you." "We really don't have to stay at the club long, do we?" she whispered as we walked. I knew how much Linda loved to dance with our friends, so she might say, "I better not wait too long before we're alone, preferably naked." I smiled back at her. "Your choice, honey." She lightly hit my arm, then hugged it and pressed herself against it. We reserved a table for 10 at the club, and it's a good thing we did. It seemed like a lot of other people were busy trying to forget February, but they weren't too busy to miss the 5 women in our group. "You're getting a lot of attention, dear," I whispered to Linda. "You're the most attractive woman in the room, as always." "Oh, you," she looked at me, pressing her soft breasts lightly against my hand. "You don't have to say things like that, although I like to hear them." "But I must," I replied. "The truth is the truth. You can't have an opinion about the truth." Yes, I know it's a flaw in logic, but neither of us cared about it at that moment. She understood and glowed even brighter. Neither Linda nor I were great dancers, but we didn't disgrace ourselves either. We just didn't care about it. We were on the dance floor to enjoy each other, not to entertain anyone. So I danced with the love of my life, with breaks for hot wings and drinks. I went for another batch of wings. When I returned, Dave was asking Linda to dance. I heard her answer, "I'd love to, Dave, and I'd dance another time, but I want to make this night special for Jim and I. I'm only dancing with him tonight." Was I proud? Happy? Of course there was. I handed out the wings and whispered in Linda's ear, "So, is it time to leave yet?" "Right after you brought in a fresh batch of wings. What are you thinking? We'll both need energy for what I have planned." She looked at me again with the same expression and held my hand under the table. A few minutes later, the group took a break. In the relative silence, we heard loud laughter from another table and turned to look. "Hey, is that Mark Lavalier?" Phil craned his neck to get a better look. It's him," Dee squealed excitedly. Mark Lavalier was the star tight end on our football team. Unlike many others on the team, he lived here all year round. He had a reputation as a genuinely nice guy and was as well known for his community service as his exploits on the field. Mark became the main topic of conversation at our table as guys talked about his football accomplishments and women praised his good deeds and good nature. "It doesn't hurt that he's also handsome," Dee added. Linda and I both knew who he was, but at that moment we were not particularly interested in anything other than each other. We let the conversation flow past us, holding hands under the table. "Hey, you two, get a room." Linda and I looked at each other. We didn't even kiss. Well, not for real. My feeding her wings didn't count. Besides, we already rented a room. We were saved from further embarrassment when the band started playing again. "Shall we dance here or upstairs?" I whispered to Linda. Before she could respond, Jane interrupted us. "Look, he's coming here." Indeed, Mark Lavalier left his table and headed towards ours. I was amused by the reactions of the women at our table. The four of them straightened their hair and stood on their tiptoes, almost saying, pick me, pick me." If you think a woman can't pout while sitting, you still have a lot to learn. Linda looked down and squeezed my hand tighter. "Hi, I'm Mark. Will you dance with me?" He stood behind Linda's left shoulder, holding out his hand. I felt Linda gasp, throwing my hand like it was a hot potato. I watched, stunned, as she turned her back to me, gave Mark her right hand, and rose gracefully from her chair. "Hey man, now my feelings are hurt. I thought she was only dancing with you today." Dave smiled, teasing me. "Yeah, I thought so too," I grumbled. "Relax, Jim. It's just a dance." Jane tried to calm me down. I tried to believe her, but I had a bad feeling. The band played a couple of fast songs, and our entire table watched them dance. Just like everyone else in the room. Mark was good, much better than me, and Linda was clearly enjoying herself. Her partner and her dress together showed her in all her glory. "They look great together, don't they? Come on, Jim, let's join them," Dee suggested, clearly trying to distract me. "Thank you, but no." The next song was slow. I watched Linda melt in his arms, fitting perfectly as if she belonged there. He was good at this too. A lot of practice, I guess, I thought bitterly. Mark said something to Linda. She smiled sweetly back. He didn't do anything that would cause my legitimate objections. He didn't dance closer to her than I danced with Dee or Jane. His hands did not go where they did not belong. Another slow song, this time a ballad. I saw how the group leader observed my wife and her partner, taking his cue from them. Mark smiled as he held Linda in his arms. He was clearly pleased with what was happening. I've seen enough. I stood up from my seat and felt Jane's hand on my arm. "Wait, Jim. Give it to her. Don't ruin her evening." I pulled my hand away and looked into Linda's face. She clearly wanted to be where she was and nowhere else. She didn't want any interference from me. I sat down again. Finally, the song ended. Mark nodded to the group leader, who began a faster song. He and Linda left the dance floor, smiling at each other, but not touching, not even holding hands. Linda gave him one last dazzling smile as she turned to our table and Mark headed to his. The difference between a woman's best smile and her second best smile is negligible. If you don't know a woman well, you probably won't notice her at all. As Linda approached our table and our eyes met, her best smile faded to her second best. I realized then that we had a problem. I keep telling you that you are the most attractive woman here, I whispered in her ear as I sat her down. I took her hand in mine. Is it time to move our next dance to our room? For a moment, I thought Linda was scared. Her eyes widened, and I felt her hand shake. She quickly hid it, however, and turned away from me, looking across the table. Sorry, everyone, I just have to go to the bathroom right now. Linda, will you come with me? Dee's voice could be heard far beyond our table. I was too engrossed to wonder why she had to announce this to the whole room. Linda looked at me apologetically. Sorry, Jim, I need to freshen up too. She got up and left without answering my question. Of course, the conversation immediately turned to why no woman, when in company, can go to the toilet alone. I was just beginning to wonder why my friends were so eager to talk about this topic when Dee returned. 1. Where is Linda? Is she okay? I almost screamed. Calm down, Jim, Dee said, smiling. Linda's okay, she just needs to do something. You don't have to worry about that. She's a grown woman, you know. At this point, my friends started making fun of me about how much I cared about Linda. Yes, I was worried. Linda worried about me the same way. I put up with this for about 5 minutes, and when Linda still didn't come back, I decided I'd had enough. I stood up and headed to the bar, taking the empty plate with me as an excuse. I approached one of the barmaids. Sorry, but my wife went to the toilet about 15 minutes ago, and she still hasn't come out. She never stays that long. Can you go or send someone to check if she's okay? The barmaid looked at me in disbelief. The plate in my hand gave me an idea. The wings are great, and she loves spicy food, but sometimes she has a reaction. Really, I just want to know she's okay. Her name is Linda. Let me show you a photo of her. I put the plate down and pulled out Linda's photo on my phone. The barmaid began to show some sympathy when at that moment a voice was heard next to me. She's fine, no need to check on her. Dee turned to the barmaid. It's okay, I'll take it upon myself. She placed a 5 on the counter. I wondered why the barmaid looked at me with such sympathy when she removed the bill. What? Why? But she went there with you? Because you asked her? I was completely confused. Jim, she's not in the restroom. She left the club. Gone? Without me? Why? What happened? Why didn't she tell me? Where is she? Is she okay? I still didn't understand. Let's go to the back of the bar where there's some privacy. I just went where Dee pulled me. It was quieter in the dark corner at the end of the bar. Dee looked into my eyes. Jim, Linda loves you. She loves you and the kids more than anything in this world, and always will, and you know it. But tonight, she's spending the night with Mark. I stood there with my mouth open, looking stupid as my world fell apart. Pictures swirled in my head, or what was left of it. Linda is at the top of the stairs in her beautiful blue dress. Linda at dinner. Linda at the club. Linda when we fed each other wings. Linda in the arms of the freak. My anger grew. So on what was supposed to be a special night for us, she left me for some ugly jock. I looked at Dee, growling the words. Jim, she didn't leave you. She will come home tomorrow, and you will have many more special evenings together. She didn't even have the courage to tell me to my face that she was leaving me. She just slipped out the back door. Jim, listen to me. She didn't leave you. Well, if she didn't leave me, then where the hell is she now? She's not with me, right? I was getting louder, and I didn't care who heard me. Please calm down. People are looking at you. Look, I know you're hurting, but it's just one night. Linda knows, we all know, that you are the only man for her and always will be. You're a good guy. Yeah, and we all know where the good guy finishes, don't we? Jim, it's not like that. You're making too much of a big deal out of it. It's just one night, a one-time experience, compared to all the years and all the love you have together. It's not a big deal if you don't make it yourself. I know she'll come back to you, and I know you'll be okay in the end." Dee spoke softly but confidently. I could barely restrain myself from grabbing this stupid woman and shaking her until her teeth rattled for saying such nonsense. She must have lived in some kind of alternate world if she really thought so. "So, friend, what was your role in all of this? You didn't really need to go to the bathroom, did you? My wife gave you the signal, right? Told you to hold me and keep me away until she and the freak slipped away?" "Yes, she asked me to do it because she didn't want you to embarrass yourself by making a scene while Mark was here. She also asked me to make sure you remember that she loves you and will always come back to you." "Yes, I will remember how much she loved me that night for a long time. Rather, she didn't want me to embarrass her by leaving my husband to spend the night with an ugly jock. I don't think it occurred to you, buddy, to remind her that she has a husband and a marriage that she could lose from for this." Dee looked into my eyes. "No, it didn't, because I know she won't lose you over this. You're too good a person to let that happen. I told her how lucky she is. She's lucky because the man that every woman loves all wanted chose her. But she is even more fortunate that she has a husband who loves her enough to overcome his wounded feelings and not make more of it than necessary. You know that she will be ready to do whatever it takes, as long as it takes to make amends to you. What if it can't be made up for? What if there's no way to fix it? So if the freak chose you the way you wanted, would you do the same?" "I would." She threw her answer in my face. "Does Dave know about this?" "No, and he doesn't need to know, because I don't think that will ever happen," she said softly. "Maybe I should tell him." "Jim, please don't. Don't think like that. I know you're hurting, but it won't help. Please come back to the table. Let us distract you for a while. You haven't danced a single dance with me this whole time. Evening, you know." She invited me with a smile. "I wanted to dance with my wife, but thanks to you, her, and the freak, that doesn't seem to be an option, does it?" I turned my back on Dee and walked back to our table. The conversation at the table stopped abruptly when I appeared. The averted glances told the whole story. All our friends now knew that my wife and the freak were currently cuckolding me. Jim, are you okay?" Dave asked, hesitantly, as he sat Dee down. I wanted to tell him what Dee said and ask him if he would be okay, but I couldn't get the words to come out of my throat. Apparently, I haven't completely abandoned the good guy role yet. This will need to be worked on. Depends on what you mean by okay. There were a few nervous chuckles. "I mean, yeah, it was mean, but you too will get over it, right? You're not going to divorce Linda over this, are you?" "I don't see why not," I answered coldly. There was a sigh of surprise at the table. "Why do you all look surprised?" I continued. "We all know how we feel about cheating. Once, and that's it. We established this a long time ago." "But Jim, this is Mark Lavalier." Dee interrupted. "So what? I don't care who sleeps with her. If it's not me, then that's it." "Jim, what about your children? We all know how much you love them and how much they need you. Think about them before you do anything." Jane's children were about the same age as mine and were best friends. "You mean how their mother thinks of them now?" "Well, that's why you hired a nanny, so you don't have to think about the kids." I think Dee meant it to sound funny. It sounded as flat as it deserved to sound. "Come on, Jim, it's just one night. This is an opportunity she'll never have again. You're not divorcing Linda over one night." "Why not?" I looked at her. There was an uncomfortable silence. "Jim, try thinking about it this way. Maybe it will help," Jane began, trying to sound sympathetic. "What if a Sports Illustrated swimsuit cover model were here today? Let's say she picked you out of everyone here to dance with and then asked to spend the night with you. Can you honestly say you wouldn't be tempted? Can you honestly say that you would refuse her?" The pleading look in Jane's warm brown eyes made her look like a particularly lovable puppy and was usually quite effective in getting her what she wanted. But not today. I stood up and looked down at Jane. "Yes, I would be tempted, but I would refuse. You see, I have a wife, and I don't want to hurt her. At least that's what I would have done before tonight. There was another deafening silence. I looked around the table at each of my former friends, all of whom were siding with my unfaithful wife. At that moment, I sincerely hoped to never see either of them again. I took out a 20 and threw it on the table. That's enough for my account. You're all covering for the sneaky bitch I came with. You can cover her account too. I turned on my heel and walked out of the club. My anger cooled as I walked the street and a half to the hotel. It was replaced by the deepest sadness I have ever known. Linda and I had to walk this road together, holding hands, joking with our friends about what they were going to do when they got to their rooms and getting jokes in return. She had to hold my hand the way she does and bury her face in my sleeve when the conversation got too frank. Instead, I was alone. I took the elevator alone, trying not to remember what Linda and I had done in the other hotel elevators. I alone entered our room. Alone, I faced the ruins of our special evening. I turned on the light and closed the door behind me. Suddenly, I felt so tired that I couldn't put it into words. I threw my winter coat on the floor and headed towards the bedroom. On each pillow was a god of a candy. In the middle of the bed was linen that I had never seen before. It was dark blue, darker than her dress, with black lace trim. In my imagination, I saw her in this lingerie, with that love and sensuality in her eyes that was her own and belonged to me until this evening. I carefully took the lacy things into my hands, as if by holding them I could bring her back. It didn't work. I started crying. My wife, my lover, my best friend, was taken from me by another man. He easily, effortlessly, took her from me as if he had every right to do so. He didn't care what she meant to me. All he saw in her was a cute toy for one night, and she just let him. I didn't mean enough to her to cause even the slightest resistance. It was as if she also believed that he had a greater right to her than I, who had earned it for almost 10 years as a faithful, loving husband. Yes, it was only supposed to be for one night, and the next morning, I guess. And what will he and this night leave in her heart, mind, and feelings? How could I ever compare to the town's hero, the handsome stud, Mark, the freak lavalier? I must have dozed off. When I woke up, it was almost 1 o'clock, and I was bent over the bed with my back hurting and my lace panties and bra soaked from tears in my hands. I looked around the room. Thinking about what we planned to do in this room, I realized that I couldn't sleep here. At home, in our bed? No, it's even worse. Another hotel. This is stupid. I already had a hotel room. Maybe one of the children's rooms. This might work. I packed Linda's suitcases and mine. I ate both candies, there was no way to waste the goodness, and threw the wet panties and bra into the trash. They were empty and useless without Linda, just like our special evening. I checked out of the hotel. She and the freak will figure out how she can get home. She probably won't show up until checkout time anyway. The young woman behind the counter, professionally cheerful, seemed worried when she asked if we had enjoyed our stay. I looked at her for a few seconds, trying to understand her question, then realized that couples who rent a mini suite usually don't check out until the last minute. No, the room was fine, circumstances just changed. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said. Her professionally cheerful mood returned when she realized it was not her hotel's fault. Apparently, she had seen this before. It didn't bother her much. Our small starter home didn't have a spare bedroom, or even a couch big enough to lie on. Tommy's room was the best option. I myself was surprised that I slept well and without dreams. I still don't know how I did it, but it was a blessing. I sat on Tommy's bed and thought about what I needed to do. I didn't know when my unfaithful wife would return home. She was clearly too busy with the freak to write or call. I figured she wouldn't show up until the afternoon, which would give me plenty of time to pack up everything I'd need for the week or so and leave before she arrived. On Monday, I will find a lawyer and begin the divorce process. My ex-friends and probably my soon-to-be ex-wife thought that one-time infidelity should not apply to this case. They were wrong. It didn't matter who slept with her. If it wasn't me, that's it. They simply had to live with their disappointment. I made myself breakfast. As I was putting the dishes away in the sink, my eyes fell on the refrigerator door. Tommy's crayon drawing depicted his family in the typical style of a 4-year-old. He tried to correctly depict the hair and eye color of everyone, even his sister, and there was no doubt about the happiness and love that the artist felt. What would it do to him if I let his mother and the freak tear his family apart? And what will happen to my girl Emma? I knew that neither Emma nor Tommy were on Linda's mind at that moment. I wasn't either, and she deserved to lose us all. But to give her what she deserves, I will have to destroy the world of 2 innocent children. Can I do it? And if I can't, then what next? I didn't have a clue, so I unpacked our suitcases and did chores that took half my brain to do. A little after noon, I took a break and plopped down in a chair in the living room. I didn't turn on the light despite yet another gray, dreary day. The almost darkness matched my mood as I tried to figure out how to end my broken marriage with the least harm to my children. After a while, I don't know how long it was, I heard a car in the driveway and then a key in the lock. I thought I should be curious enough to look out the window. The freak brought her home himself? Did he send her in a limousine? By taxi? I didn't care enough to get out of my chair. Jim, I'm home. She sounded the same as she always did when she came back from shopping. She closed the front door and turned on the light. I turned to look at her. She looked exactly the same. The blue dress still did everything for her that it had done the day before. Her dark hair fell down her back the same way. The posture of the head, the position of the shoulders, the face, the rings on the finger, everything was exactly the same as the day before. It was as if nothing had changed, as if she hadn't spent all night and all morning betraying me with a freak. This shouldn't be possible, I thought. There had to be some visible difference, something to show what she had done, at least some kind of bashful expression on her face. But none of this happened. "It's still me, the same as always," she said with a gentle smile. Of course she knew what I was thinking. "Nothing has changed. Everything is the same. My love for you is the same as yesterday." If that's true, then we probably never had what I thought we had. Linda's face fell. "Jim, dear, go upstairs and shower and change. I unpacked your things. I took a shower before I came home. You know I would never. Take another one." There was a growl in my voice that she had never heard from me. She ran upstairs without a word. I thought I had enough time to get my anger under control, but apparently I was wrong. I tried to pull myself together while she showered so we could talk about what to do next. I owed it to our children. She came downstairs, dressed in a tracksuit, her hair pulled back into a ponytail and a worried expression on her face. "Thanks for putting my things away, Jim, but where is the linen I laid out on the hotel bed?" "I threw it in the trash, just like you did with our special evening." "Jim, I bought these especially for us. I was hoping to wear them today so I could start making amends. I rented this hotel just for us, and we know how well it worked, right?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. I tried to pull myself together again. "Was it what you expected?" The question hung in the air. Finally, Linda met my gaze, her face filled with concern. "Jim, I know you have questions. I know we need to talk, and I'll tell you everything you want to know, honestly and completely. But are you sure you want to know? This, I'll tell you. Honestly, but I don't want to hurt you." "It's a little late to think about not hurting me, isn't it?" Linda winced. "I know, but I'm afraid that by telling you what happened, I'll cause you more pain, and it will make it harder for us. Well, for you to get over this, so we can move on with our marriage. Could we please focus on the future? We can't let one night ruin our lives." "That's what you must have been thinking about last night," I replied. I pointed to a small crystal vase that Linda loved and that always sat on the mantelpiece. "How many times would I have to throw this vase on the fireplace for it to break? And then how long would it take for you to get over the fact that I broke it? Even if there was a way to fix it to put it back, it would never be the same again, would it? Jim, you know how much I love this vase, but I can do without it. Our marriage, which we have built together over almost 10 years, is much stronger and more beautiful than this vase. Our love is built to weather storms and last a lifetime. I can't do without this. I know that you are in a lot of pain right now. I know that I need to make amends for you, and I will do it no matter what the cost. I have enough to eventually overcome my pain, and we will be fine. Until last night, I knew you loved me enough to never cheat on me. I guess we were both wrong. Linda fell back into her chair, exhausted. So, was it what you expected? Everything and more. There was both compassion and determination in her gaze as she looked straight at me. Well, I asked that question myself, didn't I? At least she seemed serious about being honest. I sighed. Maybe we should continue and find out how bad it is. How did it start? I asked. Linda thought for a moment. I was shocked when Mark asked me to dance. You know, I wasn't trying to get his attention. I was sure he would choose someone else. Then he asked me, and I saw the envy in Dee's eyes, and I realized that I'll never get the chance to say I danced with Mark Lavalier again, so I took his hand. I was too excited to say anything. I didn't even tell him my name until we were on the dance floor, and he didn't ask. I knew that I said that I would only dance with you, but I thought that I would dance a couple of dances with him, and that would be the end of it. I would come back to you, and you would understand. I enjoyed dancing with Mark. He's a very good dancer, as you've probably noticed. He's thinking about teaching ballroom dancing when he's done with football, if his knees can handle it. I think he'll be good at it. After the second fast dance, I thought it was all over. Just as I was about to thank him for the dance, the band started a slow song and his arms wrapped around me. It sounds like a cliché or a stupid teenage girl, but from that moment on I forgot about everything, except him. He didn't say anything, but I knew then that he wanted much more from me than just a dance. Almost at the same moment I realized that I would give it to him. I didn't really decide, I didn't think about it. I just knew, as if I had been told. During the second slow dance, he asked me if I was ready. He didn't need to explain what he meant. I nodded. I couldn't speak. There's a back door next to the toilets. Tell me you need to go, and I'll meet you there. I appreciated that he was gentleman enough not to come up to our table and rub your nose in it. Then he went to his table, and you sat me down and took my hand. I'm sure you noticed how nervous I was. I noticed. Like a fool, I thought that after dancing with him, you would be looking forward to seeing me. It never occurred to me that you couldn't wait to leave me. I keep telling you, I didn't leave you. It was no different than going shopping or going to work. I knew I'd be back, just like always. Really? So you really think running away for the night to spend it with Freak is no different than going to the store? Well, no, not really, but it still wasn't like I was actually leaving you. Damn, that was truly a departure. She flinched as if I had hit her. I tried to pull myself together again. If I had come and intervened, would you have stayed with me? Linda looked up and held my gaze. No. I probably deserved it myself. I should have turned away from her. I mean so little to you. No, Jim, don't ever think like that. You mean the world to me. Bullshit, Linda. Actions speak louder than words, and from the moment the Freak spoke to you until this very moment, your actions say that I mean nothing to you. I glanced at the clock on the mantelpiece. Time to pick up the kids. I'll bring them home, help them get settled, then I'll leave. Be back tomorrow night. I can't take this anymore. Jim, I didn't do this to hurt you. Please don't do anything that will make it harder for us to continue together. Really, you already took care of everything, didn't you? Please, Jim, think about Emma and Tommy. Think about what this could do to them. I exploded. You mean how you thought about them last night? No. You have no right to say that. You can't hide behind them. Linda looked like she had seen a ghost. While I'm gone, I want you to write what happened last night and this morning. I already know that the Freak had you unconscious. You don't have to go into details, but I need to know what you thought and felt, and I don't think I can be in the same room while you tell me this. I can barely look at you right now, but I still need to know what happened. Maybe it won't be so bad if I read it, eh? I won't hear. I'll do whatever you ask, Jim. But how can I begin to make amends to you if you're not here? I have plans for us tonight. She smiled at me uncertainly. Not until you show me a clean sty test from your doctor. About, Linda blushed. Did you have to embarrass me like that, Jim? Mark is an athlete. He should be clean, I'm sure of it. Yes, I'm sure he would say so if you asked. But you didn't ask, did you? I grabbed my coat and headed towards the door. She just confirmed that she let the freak fuck her unprotected, without thinking about anything she might have picked up or passed on to me. Crap. I love you, Jim. Now, Linda, I have no idea what you mean by that. Emma and Tommy rushed towards me as soon as I entered Mrs. Porter's living room. I knelt down and picked them up, one on each arm, while they shouted, "Daddy," in my ears. Neither of them would go down to the ground to walk to the car, so Mrs. Porter helped me grab a baby backpack in each hand and waved goodbye to us. They didn't stop talking for a second while I buckled them in, started the car, and drove home. You would have thought they had been away for a week by the number of important things they had to tell me. And of course, they had to correct each other on almost everything, because their brother or sister could not convey anything correctly. It was noisy, chaotic, and I couldn't get a word in even if I wanted to. This was exactly what I needed. When we got home, of course, they had to go through the same process with Linda, which gave me time to unpack their backpacks and pack my things for the night. They finally calmed down, and we had dinner and read together as usual. It was a good time for family bonding, and then time for them to sleep. I kissed them as we laid them down, and those kisses were a promise. No matter what Linda does, no matter what happens to us, I will do what is right for my children, whatever it takes. I've thought about what you asked me to do, Jim. Are you absolutely sure you want this in writing? Do you want to be able to come back this year and relieve the pain? I never wanted all of this, but you did it anyway. It's obvious that what I want doesn't mean anything to you anymore. I know I hate reading this, but I have to understand if I'm going to make the right decisions in the future. So no, I don't want to read it, but I have to. Linda's hand reached out to stroke my neck, as she always did when I was tense. I took a step away from her. Her hand dropped and her face turned pale. I think I understand. It will be hard, but I will do what you ask. I'll mark the parts that I think will be the most painful so you can skip them, if you want, of course. She tried to help me as she always did when I was stressed. Only this time it didn't work so well because she was the one causing the stress. I nodded and took my suitcase. See you tomorrow after dinner. I love you, Jim. You know, I used to believe it. There was a small local bar not far from my office called Willing Mind. It was designed as a 19th century working-class pub and had a somewhat run-down appearance, but was not in the right area to attract the real dregs of society. Sometimes I went there to relax. It was the right place. Over the next few hours, I had a couple of beers and thought. That's what I told myself, at least, but I can't remember a single thought I had then. So I guess I just sat there and suffered until it closed. I spent the night in my office. Why not? It was there, free of charge. I knew no one would disturb me, and I wasn't going to get much sleep anyway. The next morning, I brought myself breakfast and really thought about it for a while. I needed to understand something, for Emma and Tommy's sake, if not for my own. The future I wanted with the woman I loved was in tatters, or so it seemed to me. What did I want now? I would have to figure it out and make it happen on my own, because what I wanted clearly didn't matter to Linda. The children came first, that was obvious. They deserved a stable home where they would be encouraged to thrive and grow to their full potential. I won't accept anything less than that from myself or Linda. This was non-negotiable. What about Linda? She still seemed to think that as soon as I stopped suffering, we would go back to the way things were before. Never. I knew that over time the pain would decrease, but it would not change the essence of the problem. The memory of her betrayal will stay with me for the rest of my life, and despite her protests, we will both never be the same. So are Linda and I done. I didn't see any other solution. What did this mean for Emma and Tommy? I dreaded the thought of them being moved back and forth, splitting weekends and holidays between Linda and me. Children always try to play one parent against the other, and it never works for them. If Linda and I get divorced, it will make everything too easy. Emma has already wrapped me around her little finger. I'll be an absolute wuss when she's a teenager. Linda will be the same with Tommy. This mischievous look and dimple on her cheek can already melt her strictest decision into sticky caramel. No, raising this couple will require both of us to work together. I needed to figure out a way to do this. But how? I was glad that I suggested that Linda write everything down. I could go back and reread parts I didn't understand, and if I got too angry or overwhelmed with grief, I could put it aside and come back later. I've noticed that I don't think clearly when I'm angry or grieving. I was surprised to realize that yes, I was grieving. Something dear to me, the promise that from that day almost 10 years ago, I would be Linda's only one in this most intimate of encounters, the trust that I would always be first in her heart, even the belief that she would never intentionally hurt me. All this is gone forever. Did she lose it too? She, of course, did not hesitate to give up all this. Does she regret it now? On Sunday evening, I returned home to the usual boisterous greeting from my children. The thought of disappointing them almost broke my heart. So when Linda greeted me with a smile and a hug, I accepted it. "What did you tell them about where I was?" I whispered in her ear. "Who cares?" I felt her tense up. "So that our versions coincide." She relaxed. "I said you were in the office." I chuckled. "What's so funny?" "This is true." "About?" She pulled away and smiled at me. Our eyes met. I smiled sadly and shrugged. Damn, this woman knew me too well. Then why did she? Doesn't matter. Linda's first question after the kids had settled down surprised me, but probably shouldn't have. "Jim, where are we going to sleep tonight? I desperately want to make love to you, but I understand why we can't. I'm willing to sleep somewhere else, but the sofa won't fit, and we haven't fixed the air mattress after it leaked this summer." "You're right, and Emma's bed is too small for you. Plus, if she or Tommy wake up in the night, we both need to be where they think we should be. I think we should both sleep in our bed, but at the first hint of something sexual, you'll end up on the floor." "I understand," Linda said sadly. She sighed and pulled out a stack of handwritten pages from her coffee table drawer. "I spent a lot of time on this. I suspect that one of the reasons you left was to give me time to think about things without you being there. That was smart of you, and I appreciate it. You know me well, although you may not think so now. I've tried to think about the questions you might have and the things that worry you, and answer them as honestly and completely as possible. I know this will be painful for you to read, and I cried as I wrote it. God, that was hard. I knew I could ease the pain by lying to you or hiding something. But you're right, we need to bring the truth to light. I promise that every word I write and every word I say to you is the pure truth, no matter how painful it may be. I won't lie to you for any reason." Timidly, almost shyly, she placed the papers in my hand. "Good night, Jim. I love you." She kissed the top of my head and left. I looked at the papers in my hand. I've always liked Linda's handwriting. It was feminine without being over the top or childish, and it was legible and flowing without being overly elaborate. It was her, like her style of dress and demeanor, and she knew I loved it. That's why she wrote it by hand instead of typing it. I sighed and started reading. "Dear Jim, yesterday afternoon, when you left, you said you didn't understand what I meant when I said I loved you. I was stunned. I didn't think you could mean it the way you did after we'd loved each other for so long. I think you meant that if I loved you as much as you thought I did, I couldn't have done what I did on Friday night. I would agree with you. 5 minutes before Mark came to our table, a minute before, if you had asked me if I could cheat on you with someone, much less leave with you that same night, I would have laughed and said that this will never happen. And then it happened. My love for you has not changed. I swear I haven't changed. You've given me the opportunity to try to explain how that could be true given what I did on Friday night, and I'll try. First of all, please know that I didn't do this to hurt you or humiliate you, although I know it happened, and I didn't do it to get back at you for anything. I think deep down you understand this. Some of what you will read here will hurt you greatly. But you asked me to be complete and honest, and I will try. I need you to understand how I felt in Mark's arms. I was acutely aware of his size and strength every minute I was with him. It made me feel small and helpless, even though he never resorted to violence. I felt depressed, almost lost in him. It wasn't like I didn't have a will, it was like my will was surrounded by his will. It wasn't like I had no choice, it was like all the decisions had already been made. I felt it almost instantly the first time he hugged me for a slow dance. In that moment, I became his, for whatever he wanted, for as long as he wanted me, and we both knew it. I didn't make a conscious decision, I just was. Did I like this feeling? At that moment, yes. How do I feel now? I don't like the idea that I could willingly give up so much control of myself to someone, but I have to face the fact that I did it, and the person I knew didn't care about me. I didn't try to control the situation at all, I just went with the flow and enjoyed it. Would it have been the same with any other big, strong, assertive man who wasn't that Mark Lavalier? Don't think. You know Paul is big and strong and can be pushy sometimes, but I've never felt anything like that dancing with him. So I think it was because of Mark. When I signaled to Dee to take me to the toilet, she already knew what was going on. She said something about how he wanted the only pretty girl in the room who didn't throw herself at him. I think she might have been a little jealous. She then said how lucky I was, and that she would make sure you didn't find out long enough for me to leave, and would remind you how much I loved you. She told me to have fun and tell her everything later. Then I walked out the door and Mark was waiting there with my coat. I don't know how he got it without a wardrobe token. I guess being a celebrity helps. When he put his hands on my shoulders after helping me put on my coat, I felt as overwhelmed and possessed as I did in his arms on the dance floor. He took me to his house, took my coat and hung it up, turned on soft music. We danced in his living room for a while. I don't know why he did this. Perhaps he was trying to show that he was a gentleman by not taking me straight to bed. I appreciated this and told him about it. We kissed while we danced. He was in complete control of the situation, just as he had been since that first slow dance in the club. After we danced for a while, Mark picked me up and carried me to his bedroom. He laid me on my back on his bed. He carefully undressed me, almost worshiping me as he did it. When he left me in my underwear, I was as horny as I had ever been in my life. I don't know how long we had sex. It seemed like it lasted forever, and forgive me, Jim, but forever was exactly what I wanted. One time after we showered, I briefly thought about texting you to let you know I was okay and that I loved you, but I was too tired. All I could think about was sleep. I woke up in Mark's arms. Even half asleep, I felt the same sense of ownership that I had in the club and during sex. He woke up and we did it again, then he made breakfast for me. It didn't taste as good as when you make it, but it left me so tired that I would eat almost anything, even hash browns. Then we were together for the last time, slowly and tenderly. I showered again, I got dressed, and he drove me home. When I got into his car, I felt like I could make decisions again, like he'd let me go or something. I know it sounds stupid, but that's exactly how I felt. I think maybe you were right. He got what he wanted and didn't want me anymore, and I felt it. So immediately I started thinking about you and how devastated you must be. I know we're going through a rough patch, but I don't believe for a minute that our marriage is in danger. Our love is too strong. We're just too perfect for each other. Mark parked in our driveway, said, "Thank you for a wonderful evening and morning," and hugged me and kissed me one last time. He stayed in the driveway until I opened the front door, just like you always did when we were dating. I think he does this for all his girls, but it was still nice of him. I smiled and waved, he smiled and waved, and it was over. I entered our house full of desire to show you how much I love you and want to spend my whole life with you. I feel the same way now as I write this. I don't think Mark thought he was doing anything against you. I think he just thought he had a right to any woman he wanted. He chose me, and that was it. It's not like he forced me. If I had said no, I'm sure he would have just gone to someone else. He was absolutely sure that I wouldn't say no to anything he wanted, and he was right. You should know that Mark has been kind and considerate to me all this time. He didn't treat me badly, far from it. He was chivalrous and a gentleman. He treated me like a lady, opened doors and everything. He even surprised me by remembering my name the next morning. I knew it wasn't about me. I'm quite sure that he would treat any other woman the same way, and did so often. However, I can't help but think of him as a good person because of it. This part will be painful, Jim. I cry as I write, thinking about how you will feel when you read this. Tears on paper are such a cliché. I borrowed a couple of handkerchiefs from your chest of drawers. They'll be ruined when I'm done. I'll buy you new ones this week. I would never have decided to write or tell you this if you hadn't asked. Mark is an excellent lover, no doubt due to his extensive experience with many women. He knows the female body very well. He knew what would please me and excite me better than I knew, and he took full advantage of it. He knew when to be gentle and when to be assertive, but even in his most assertive moments, I never felt forced. It was something I wanted as much as he did. He was always completely in control, even in the most tender moments. It was as if I was the instrument and he was the virtuoso, and he was great. I have read and heard sex described as a man having a woman. I never really understood it, but now I do. You treat me as an equal in all things. If there is possession, then it is mutual. We belong to each other. Mark had me from the moment he hugged me on the dance floor to the moment he put me in the car to take me home, and it was far from mutual. I answered him completely and completely. From the moment he held me, he dominated my feelings to such an extent that there was no room for anything else, including what is most important to me in the world, you and our children. This is the hardest part. I'm crying as I write this, but you asked, so I have to say, I'm really sorry, Jim, but this is going to hurt. Mark is a very, very skilled lover. With experience like his, he should be like that. It was the best sex I could ever imagine, let alone experience. He studied and trained well to be able to do it the way he did with me. I write it exactly like this. It was a performance, and it was not with me and not for me, but for me. You will never have such an experience, thank God. But you have learned a lot during our time together, as have I. You have a much better motive. You want to study because you love me. This is much more valuable to me than even the best sex. This is the hardest part. It should be easier. I hope so at least. Your second handkerchief is almost completely wet. Mark wanted to give me great sex and make me happy, and he did, but it had nothing to do with me as a person. I was just another woman to him. I think he would be like that with any woman, but that's because of who he is, not who she is. For such an intimate act, it was almost impersonal. One more thing you should know. If Mark Lavalier knelt in front of me and asked me to divorce you and marry him, I would tell him no. This would be true even if we didn't have Emma and Tommy. If I were single and you and Mark asked me to marry you, I would choose you without hesitation. I wouldn't think twice and wouldn't regret anything. He is a great lover, you are a great man. He may be the unofficial hero of the city, you are my official hero. How can I say you're my hero when I said I had the best sex with Mark? Neither you nor I believe that there is anything like just sex. I don't think it was just sex for Mark. If it were, it wouldn't be as good. And that's what we did most of the time. But what we have between us is much more important than everything that happened between Mark and me. If I traded what we have for a life with nights with Mark, I would be the biggest fool in the world. I don't like Mark, not even close. I respect him for who he is and what he is, and I enjoyed my time with him, but that's about it. It's over, once and for all, and I'm more than ready to get back to what really matters to me, where my heart is and where it will always be. Returning to the beginning of this letter. How could I do this, loving you the way I know I do? Or in other words, why didn't my love for you stop me? I'm not sure I completely understand, but I think it is. When I got up to dance with Mark, I thought it would be a couple of dances, a few minutes of teasing from our friends, and that would be the end of it. The man every woman at our table wanted to dance with was just the same me. So I went to dance with him. At that moment, I didn't think about anything else. Just a couple of dances. What could be wrong with this? And then the slow dancing began. I think men like Mark truly believe that they have a right to any woman they want. As Henry Kissinger said, Power is the ultimate aphrodisiac. When Mark so confidently and forcefully declared his right, it didn't even occur to me to doubt it. If I thought at all, it was something like, "Oh, sure," and I didn't think anything more about it other than being flattered that he wanted me. It was just him. It's not that I stopped loving you or the children. It's more like something I didn't think or like at all. Everything in me simply reacted to him, the way an instrument reacts to a musician. I will say again, there was and is no love for Mark in my heart. My heart is at home where it belongs, with you and our children, and there it will remain forever. Jim, I know you are suffering terribly, and I know it will take time to heal. Take as much time as you need. Do whatever it takes. I only ask for two things. Don't do anything that could harm the children, and please don't take a mistress. I know it sounds hypocritical, but it will destroy me. I will do everything to help you heal. Even the worst wounds heal over time, and I will be there for as long as it takes, and always after that. I know you well, and I know that you love me. I see it in your eyes, behind the pain. I feel it when I write this, even though you are not at home. I trust my future and the future of our children to this love. I know what upsets you is that my love for you didn't stop me from letting Mark take over our special night and borrow the things I promised would be only yours. I understand, but now everything he borrowed is returned, and like my love for you, they are unchanging and will be yours as long as I breathe. With love, as always. Linda. Love is a strange thing. It can flare up suddenly, it can fade away gradually, it can last forever, no matter what happens, but it can also disappear instantly. His love for Linda had dissolved like snow in the Caribbean by the time I finished reading the letter, which definitely gave the whole situation a focus, like a camera lens finally turned into position. My wife was easily accessible, and in one night of lust, she left our marriage without even thinking about me or the children. Of course, not even about children. What would happen to them if we divorced? Only a fool would think that they would not have suffered possibly irreversible harm from this. Until yesterday, she was my life, and I would give my life for her. But not anymore, really. If I saw her drowning, I would turn away. My brain was racing. There were few options, I would say four. Kill her, divorce her, turn a blind eye to her vile betrayal and forgive her, or disappear forever, abandoning everyone. I immediately excluded the third and fourth options. The third for myself, I, of course, could not live further, knowing that there was a cowardly traitor next to me, and the last for the sake of my children, my flesh and blood. I also ruled out the first option. Going to jail because of a bitch would be stupid, and I didn't consider myself that way. Of course, I could have hired someone to kill her while I created an alibi, but perhaps there was something worse than instant death. So the only option left is divorce, and I will be contacting a lawyer shortly. I was exhausted. I tried to climb into bed without waking Linda, but just as I was about to fall asleep, I heard her sleepy voice. "Have you read it?" "Yes." "All?" "I don't want to talk about this now. We'll discuss it tomorrow," I said, turning away. I didn't sleep much that night, and it seemed to me that Linda didn't sleep either, often tossing and turning in bed until she fell asleep in the morning. The next evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Linda and I sat on the couch with our usual glasses of wine. "How was your day?" she asked. "Real, 100% Monday," I answered tiredly. "Sorry," she replied. "Mine wasn't that bad. It was a relief to think about something other than." She trailed off. Yes, I wish I could have done the same. My voice sounded harsh. I felt her pull away. "Dee called this afternoon," Linda continued after a pause. "Yes? What did she want?" "She's not as bad as you think, Jim. She asked about you first, even before she asked about Mark. She says she's sorry you're hurting so much, but she knows things will get better in time, and this will all just be a little bump in the road." It shows how clueless she is. We sat in silence for several minutes. We looked and sounded the same as always, just another evening at home. But I felt that something had changed between us, some kind of space or barrier that had not been there last week. I think Linda felt it too. "Do you have any questions, Jim, about what I wrote?" I shook my head, wondering where to start. There was something I was hoping to find there, but I didn't. What exactly? She asked with tension in her voice. Any indication that you understand what I must overcome if we stay together? I felt her shudder. Do you want to talk about this tonight, or are you too tired? You need to know this, but you don't have to today. The sooner you get it out, the sooner you can start to heal. Let's do it today. I collected my thoughts. Let's say we were on a date as a couple with our friends. You left me and went with another man and spent the whole night and the next morning having sex with him. If you did this on the first date, would there be a second? But Jim, it was Mark. What the hell difference does it make? Whoever he is, you chose him over me. On the first date, fine. It's your right. Have a nice life, and don't forget to close the door behind you. I won't think well of you, I certainly won't call again, but I'll get through it. After almost 10 years of marriage, how am I supposed to survive this? Jim, I keep trying to tell you, I didn't choose Mark over you. Damn it, I chose. For the rest of my life, I'll have to live with the fact that I'm only your first choice when that bastard doesn't care about you. Linda was terrified. Jim, you were always my first choice. This has been the case for the last 10 years. One night doesn't change anything. One night changed everything, or maybe just showed it. You chose the bastard every chance you got, from the moment he asked you to dance until the moment he decided he was done with you. How can I make you understand that this is not true? You can't because it's true. And don't give me this nonsense about how you didn't decide, or that your decisions have already been made. You chose to signal Dee to take you to the restroom. You chose to tell her to cover for you. And when you came out of the closet, you chose to go to the bastard, not away from him. You chose him over me every time. Linda was silent for a moment. Maybe I just don't want it to be true, she almost whispered. I don't want to think that I'm the kind of woman who can do this, even if all my friends think it's okay. And they think so, by the way. Dee told me this afternoon. But I promise you that's not what's in my heart. Do you remember a week ago when you knew everything about my heart and I knew everything about yours? What a mess. She shook her head sadly and continued. I know I hurt you badly and I can't fix it. But even the most severe wounds heal over time, right? It doesn't have to affect our future, right? You're right, it will hurt less over time, but don't you see that there's more to it than that? What you did on Friday night changed our marriage forever. It showed me that the things I was sure about you and our marriage were wrong. Basic things, such as your always willingness to be there for me, such as the things that we promised would be forever just for us, even the trust that you would not be cruel to me. Since Friday evening, all this has gone away. None of this is true, and will never be true again. So what is left that I can count on? Linda thought for a moment. Think about our car. You know, that immodest, unostentatious, mom and dad car that we chose together. The one in which we and our children laughed, cried, bought groceries, and went on vacation. I love our car because it's ours, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But let's say, suddenly, for a minute, I had the opportunity to drive a Maserati. I never thought about it, but here it is, and all our friends are jealous of me, so I said yes. I lowered the roof and felt my pulse quicken and the wind in my hair. I rode faster than ever before and thoroughly enjoyed it. Then I returned to the dealer and saw our unremarkable but beautiful car on the lot waiting for me. I thanked the seller and returned the keys to him. I enjoyed the experience, but if he had offered me $50,000 to trade our car for a Maserati, I would have laughed and turned it down without hesitation and never regretted it. Yes, now I've driven a Maserati. I had sex with another man who is very good at pleasuring a woman. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but it's over. I'm home now, and home is where I want to stay. So what happens when someone offers you a ride in a Lamborghini, or maybe a souped-up classic Mustang? Or will he suggest you leave the Maserati next to our car so you can have the best of both worlds? Linda shook her head decisively. No, Jim, never. I have everything I want right here. Wouldn't you have said the same thing about a Maserati before Friday night? She sighed but didn't answer the question. Jim, I haven't changed. I'm still just me, the same me as always. I know that since I came back on Saturday, you have been looking for something that has changed in me. You didn't find it, right? And you won't find it, because it's not there, it's in the way you look at things. It was less than 24 hours of our entire life together. We can't let this destroy us, Jim. We cannot. Please tell me what makes this harder for you than it should be. It was my turn to think. You keep insisting that you haven't changed, but if you're right, then I was wrong about you for 10 years because I was sure that you could never do what you did on Friday night. If I was wrong about something so basic, what else was I wrong about? What, if anything, is left of what I thought I knew about you? You still haven't answered this question. The next morning, after a quiet breakfast right before I left for work, in the calmest and quietest way possible, but with a tone of voice that I had never had before, I told her, "Listen to me carefully, because I will only say this once. You betrayed me, you were my life, and publicly humiliated me, treating me like dirt, trampling on my dignity as if I were a pathetic cockroach. I will never forgive you, and I will make you pay for this." I walked out, slamming the door before she could say a word. That evening, Linda greeted me as best she could, without mentioning what I had said to her, perhaps convinced that my statement was a temporary outburst of anger and deep down convinced that she could make things right, trying to prove that nothing had changed. The smell of a delicious dinner was in the air, and in front of me was my beautiful wife, dressed in her blue evening dress and with a smile that tried to be the best, but was betrayed by her insecurities. I couldn't help it. All I saw was my wife in the bastard's arms, giving him her best smile, anticipating what they would soon do together. I shuddered and looked away from her. Her face was distorted. There were tears in her blue eyes. I saw Emma and Tommy behind her, arranging cutlery on the table, but watching us carefully. I closed my eyes and hugged Linda. I felt her breath hitch as she tried not to cry in front of the children. I didn't mean. I meant, "SHHH," I whispered in her ear. "Let's pretend we're a happy couple. Do you want me to change?" "No, the children will think something is wrong. Let me wash my face and let's have dinner." I held her until her breathing became even. "Thank you, Jim. I love you. I don't know how I got through the evening pretending everything was fine, but I did it. I can't say I deserved an Oscar." Linda was not deceived for a moment. But the children didn't notice anything, and that was the main thing for me. Linda began sobbing and mumbling almost immediately as soon as the children went to bed. I calmed her down. "Linda, I understand. I understand. You wanted to show me in every possible way that you love me and haven't changed. The problem is that you are wrong. Everything has changed. When I opened the door, I swear I saw the bastard right behind you, hugging you. I know this is not what you meant." She began to sob again. "And believe me, this is not what I wanted, but this is what I saw." She nodded sadly. "What now, Jim?" "I really don't know, Linda. For today, I'll go to Willing Mind. I'll be home by 11, okay?" "Okay, Jim." She straightened her shoulders and met my gaze. "I know it's hard. I'm starting to realize how much I hurt you. But I know the man I married. Difficult things always bring out the best in you. It has always been this way. You may not see a path forward right now, but I bet my life that you will find a path that works for both of us. I love you, believe in you, and trust you with everything I have." I sighed as I put on my coat. "The man you married is no longer here. He died on Friday night or Saturday morning." "I don't believe this, not for a minute. You may be right and we have changed, but deep down I am still the same and you are still my hero." She stood there, still in her beautiful blue evening dress, her blue eyes sparkling. I gave her a faint smile in honor of her bravery and courage and left. It wasn't fair, damn it. It's just unfair. She made a choice, despite all her words that there was no choice. She had a wonderful night with a great guy sports hero sex idol, while I suffered alone. All our friends seemed to think it was completely normal. My life has become a complete nightmare, and I haven't even done anything. And now I had to Find a path forward that works for both of us. Crap. I told my ex-friends that I saw no reason to stay married to Linda. I still can't see. I can't imagine making love to her. It's not just the inevitable comparisons with a bastard, although that in itself is bad enough. One of my favorite pastimes, imagining what my wife looks like when she's ready to make love, has now become a complete disgust. It almost made me sick. Even seeing her around the house, I felt pain. That's why I spent so much time in the willing mind. I really needed to make some decisions, so I think I should figure out what my options are for getting a divorce. LV been a family friend since my grandfather lived. He was almost retired, but he was still smart like Sophocles, wise like Solomon, and tougher than steel when it came to anything our family needed. I saw him one evening after work and told him the whole sad story. The old man thought for a moment and shook his head. Linda said she regrets what she did. Well, no, but I didn't expect this. Right now, she's sorry you're suffering and maybe a little scared for her marriage, but more likely she's happy with what she did and wants to stay that way. I remembered what she had said about the Maserati and knew he was right. You've probably never watched a confessional program on daytime television, and it's for the best if you watch too many of them. Your brain will turn to mush. But you may pick up hints about the behavior of women there that you won't find anywhere else. Not from what they say, of course, and certainly not from what the great experts say, but from what they actually do. One of the more common scenarios is a woman who had an affair or one-time sex with a famous person. And guess what? They may have had great careers, children and grandchildren, whatever, but what they are most proud of is that Mr. Someone saw them and had them for a night or three. You know this not because they say it, but because for their only time in front of a large audience, this is what they want to talk about. Sometimes this is how the poor husband finally finds out. But on very rare occasions, married or not, they are glad they did it. It's what they feel makes them stand out from the ordinary, and they don't want to give it up or regret it. Something to tell your kids, huh? I said bitterly. No, not to my children, LV grinned. To my grandchildren. They don't want their children to follow in their footsteps, but they do want their grandchildren to know that they had a life, once upon a time. The old man became serious. You want to know what your options are for divorce. They are not good. She doesn't work, so in addition to her getting half of your savings, you'll have to pay child support for her in addition to child support. You'll have to keep paying the mortgage on the house, and thanks to absurd divorce laws that clearly discriminate against men, even if the wife is a cheater, judges tend to award the wife the house and primary custody of the children, whom you'll probably see for a while and then stop seeing. At all. Constant separation will alienate them from you, not to mention the fact that your wife can turn them against you. As your lawyer, I will draw up the divorce papers if you ask me. But as a family friend, I don't recommend it. You need to figure out what is truly important to you in your life, what you want to preserve or protect at all costs. I know it used to be Linda. Now you need something, or better yet someone, to live for. Find it and let it guide your actions. Good luck, Jim. I shook his hand and we parted. He gave me a lot of food for thought. What was important to me? It was easy. Emma and Tommy. I would give anything and do anything to keep and protect them. My plan was already outlined and clear in my mind. Divorce? Definitely, but not immediately. I was going to wait until Emma and Tommy were older so I could explain to them what had happened and settle the financial situation. The thought of waiting until they came of age was unacceptable. It was too long. But 5 years, yes, I could have waited 5 years and then divorced Linda. At the age of 9 and 11, my children will already be able to understand. It would be difficult to pretend for so long that everything was fine. I'll have to pretend that I forgive Linda. Of course, not right away. That would hardly be plausible. But gradually, convincing her that the pain is gradually going away and we can return to the way it was before, forgetting about the horror that I was forced to endure. I would have to become a good actor, and gritting my teeth in anger, I swore to myself that I could do it. What about your financial situation? To start, I opened an online cryptocurrency account that was untraceable to my account, withdrew $5,000 from our account, and deposited it into the crypto account. The plan was quite simple. Over the next 5 years, I would withdraw small amounts of money frequently, but irregularly, and deposit it into a crypto account. At every opportunity for a gift, a trip, a purchase for the children, a vacation, I will quote Linda a slightly overpriced price and put the difference into my account until the joint account is reduced to a minimum suitable only for paying bills and the mortgage. What about the house? Of course, I had a plan for this too. Give it time. The idea that Linda might never regret her night with the bastard was a new and depressing thought. Does that mean she could do it again if given the chance, with Mark the bastard or some other bastard who thinks he's entitled to her, and then expect me to just understand because most of her friends would do the same? Crap. The only way to have a happy, committed marriage is to marry someone no one else will ever want. Linda wanted to talk Sunday night after the kids went to bed. Dee called. A week later, it was St. Patrick's Day, and the group were gathering at Brannigan for drinks and dancing. It was a work and school day, so they didn't plan to stay late, and everyone hoped we would come. It will do you good, Jim, to go out with our friends. I think you spend too much time alone, and our friends are worried about you. This is cute. They didn't care about me when they covered for my wife while she cheated on me. It's not fair, Jim. They really care about you, and you know how much you enjoyed being with them. They want me to show up so they can pretend everything is fine, so they don't have to feel guilty for helping cheat on you. To hell with them. I will not go. Okay, I understand why you think it's too early for this, but we cannot let this make us reclusive. We need to go out, and they are our friends. Then go. They are your friends now, not mine. I'll even look after the kids so you don't have to look for a babysitter. No. Her answer was immediate and categorical. My place is where you are, unless you say otherwise. I think we should go, but if you don't go, then I won't go. I'll call Dee tomorrow and tell her. The only thing I want in life now is to do whatever it takes to get you through this, so we can move forward together. You won't get rid of me, my friend. Her lips curved into a smile, but her eyes were more serious than ever. I still couldn't resist. Yes, until... Her smile disappeared. Doesn't matter. We have already discussed this. There is no need to repeat it. Linda looked at me seriously, but with kindness. What can I do, Jim? Please tell me. I really mean it. I know what you mean. I also know that you can't cancel sex with the bastard. I took a deep breath. I saw LW on Thursday evening. About, where did you meet him? How's the old grump doing? She smiled as she said this. She always had a soft spot for him. I went to his office, on legal issues. Linda turned white as a ghost. No, she whispered. Suddenly, she began to sob uncontrollably. She threw herself at me, burying her face in my shirt. She was shaking all over. I had never seen her in such a state and did not even imagine that she could be like this. I never wanted this. Never, never this. I wasn't looking for this, never. Neither him nor anyone else. You know that I wasn't looking. You saw everything. I would never do this. I love you so much, Jim, and I want you. Only you. Jim, please believe me. Please tell me I didn't ruin everything. I'll die if that's the case, Jim, honestly. You are strong, Jim. Please tell me we can fix this. Please give me some hope. Please, dear Jim, tell me that you love me. I sighed. I couldn't see her face, but I felt her trembling. My eyes filled with tears as I grieved for what we once had. However, I couldn't leave her request unanswered, so I put my plan into action and lied. I love you, Linda. But all her tears, and I knew there were many more to come, would never wash away what she did that night. It will always be a part of us. A few days later, Dee called me at work, or tried to. I hung up as soon as I found out who it was. A few minutes later, Dave called me to scold me and tell me that she was trying to be my friend. She is the woman who helped my wife cheat on me. She's not my friend. Jim, She's yours and Linda's friend. She wants what we all want, for you to be yourself again, and for you and Linda to be together. You can come back and tell me this after your wives cheat on you. I know it's hard, buddy. I know you're bleeding, and I don't know if it will stop before you bleed to death. I understand why you won't come to St. Patrick's Day. I really understand. We will miss you, but we understand. Despite what you may think, we are your friends, and we want the best for you. My life returned to normal. Work, home for dinner, cleaning the kitchen, time with the kids, and then some time at the Willing Mind bar. 2 or 3 times a week, I would withdraw small amounts of money from our joint account and deposit it into my numbered account. Sometimes I would skip a week and then withdraw a couple $1,000s the next time so it wouldn't be noticeable in the future. One day, Linda asked me to stay home so we could talk about what happened that day. Emma's teacher called me and asked if everything was okay at home. What? I was surprised. That was my first word. Linda smiled faintly. It turns out Emma has been acting aggressive at school lately. One of her friends comes from a family with divorced parents, and Emma always defended him when the other kids made fun of him. Today, she defended him with her fists. I admit, I smiled at the thought of my feisty Emma defending her friend from bullying. She won? Jim, Linda said reproachfully. The teacher added all this and came to the conclusion that something was wrong at home and called to warn me that it was affecting Emma. Smart teacher. She's like this. She's been working for 30 years. She's probably seen everything. But Jim, it's obvious that Emma knows there's something wrong between us. We have to do something. I'm trying to. I know. Do you think she noticed that you don't look at me like you used to? That you no longer touch me just like that, don't kiss me randomly, like always before? I know I miss it terribly. Me too, Linda. Believe me, I miss you. But every time I think about touching you or kissing you, I think about how the bastard did it all, and did it better. You said it yourself. Every time I want to look at you and just admire you, I think about how you will look back at me and compare me to a bastard, and I will never win in this comparison. I sighed. I should probably try harder. He's just always between us, damn it. She shuddered at these words. I never used such expressions with her. I saw her gathering her thoughts. I never said Mark was a better lover than you. Nonsense, Linda. I interrupted her. You spoke, and I have it in writing. No, I didn't. I said he has more experience, which shouldn't surprise you, and that makes him more skilled. But I never said he was a better lover. Remember how I said he played me like an instrument? For one time, one night, I liked being in the hands of a master. But that was enough. I don't want this, or him, ever again. If I had to experience this every night for a month, I'd go crazy. Mark will never be able to love me the way you do. You do it better than I could ever imagine. My body melted for him, it's true, but my body and my heart always melted for you. I wanted to laugh at her words, to laugh so as not to cry, but I was able to maintain a neutral expression on my face. Linda continued. I had a lot of time to think while you were at the Willing Mind bar. You're right, I'm comparing you. You and Mark are the only 2 men I've had sex with in the last 12 years, but you always come out on top. Sure, he can take a defensive lineman to the ground, but what good is that to me? I don't have defensive linemen at home. I need a man who can fix everything from a tire to a diaper and still keep a smile on his face. I need a man who can understand me, all of me, not just my body. I enjoyed him once, but I don't need him. I've enjoyed you for years, and I need you. See, you win every time. I probably looked a little doubtful. Now I think I understand how you feel when I try to convince you of how attractive you are, she said with a sad smile. Please, Jim, look at me. Touch me. If it's just for Emma's sake, fine, but I promise I'll think about you, not Mark. I looked into Linda's eyes and reached out my hand to her face. It's time to start changing your attitude towards her. I touched her cheek with the back of my hand and stroked it the way I always did before. Linda smiled softly and closed her eyes. Her shoulder lifted as she pressed her cheek to my hand. Long abstinence from sex caused something else to come out to her, about 18 inches below, and it confused me so much that I pulled my hand away. Linda opened her eyes and smiled at me. See? That hasn't changed, right? It was exactly the same, and I missed it so much. But after I realized that so many of the things I thought about you were wrong, and without knowing. How do you think I'm feeling? Linda shouted at me, her eyes sparkling and her face distorted. Damn it, I don't know what's true about me now. I'm good. I always thought so, and you told me this countless times. Do good people leave their husband alone to go and sleep with another man? No. Do they buy a special dress for their husband and then wear it to go and sleep with someone else? Hell no. Good people keep their promises, don't they? So what does this do to me? She took a few breaths to calm herself and continued. When we got married, I knew I wasn't the most beautiful girl you've ever dated, or the best lover, or the smartest. But the one thing I could give you was loyalty. If I couldn't give you anything else, at least this. I would go to my grave being a faithful wife. But now it's gone, and gone forever. I will never be able to say these words again. No matter how much I disappoint you, at least I have been a faithful wife. Never again. And the worst thing is, it's my own fault. Do you think this is easy to deal with? She shouted before bursting into tears again. Was she starting to suffer a little? Should I have taken pity on her and consoled her? This was only a small part of what I experienced, and her road to redemption will be long. However, I did my part like a good actor should. I hugged her. Sorry, Linda, I never thought about it from your side. I don't know why I didn't do it. I thought for a moment. So what should we do about it? I muttered. There's one thing I still know. I love you, Jim, with all my heart and soul, today as deeply and sincerely as I have ever been. Now she has calmed down. Her voice sounded tired, as if this last statement had exhausted the last of her strength. Her eyes closed, and she weakened in my arms. I looked at my soon-to-be ex-wife, who had almost fallen asleep in my arms. The thought that another man knew the body I held as intimately as I did and satisfied it better was more and more repulsive to me. Why did the thought of her enjoying sex with a better partner bother me so much? Besides treason, which in itself is extremely serious, the main part was cruelty. She didn't do it out of cruelty, but it was cruel. I've never felt so alone, and there was also a promise. She promised me a special night, and then she took it from me and gave it to the bastard. She promised she would never cheat on me, and then she did. She was nothing more than a dirty, easy girl, but for Emma and Tommy's sake, I needed to be nice to their mother again, or at least pretend for a few years. Time, no matter what, always passes quickly, and 2 years have already passed. Linda was sleeping now. I looked at her face. It was exhausted and exhausted from worry, even in sleep. To love and cherish, from this day forward, in sickness and in health. She broke her promises, broke them in a way that hurt me more than I could ever imagine, and my plan moved forward. I often made unnecessary expenses, buying expensive gifts for Linda and our beloved children. One day, I surprised her by saying, "What do you think, dear? Should we change the furniture? It's already old." Of course, Jim, it's a good idea, especially in the living room. I've been wanting to update it for a long time. But won't we spend too much? Don't worry, I have everything under control, I reassured her. Several weekends in a row, we went on short holidays, and also, of course, on summer vacation, which now lasted 3 weeks instead of the usual week in previous years. Everyone was delighted except our bank account, although my encrypted personal account was slowly but surely gaining strength. Every month, a small portion of my salary, the 13th salary, company bonuses, and the difference between actual and expected expenses contributed to his well-being. My intimate relationship with Linda has improved, even beyond sex. I tried not to miss those little touches and tender glances that filled our old life. God, this was difficult. They were supposed to be a sign of just the two of us. But now it wasn't just the two of us. There was another man, and I hated him and everything about him. I was a good enough actor to fool our children, but not Linda. She brought it up one Sunday evening as we shared our post-cost school glass of wine. Thank you for what you do, Jim. I know you're doing this for Emma and Tommy, and I think it works, but it's also good for me. I noticed. She came to life like a watered flower. I appreciate it even more because I see how difficult it is for you. How can I help you? Can you still feel it in me? Or are you afraid of comparison? Both, I think. It was true. I thought so. She smiled slightly. I think over time the first problem will resolve itself. As we create new memories together, they will eclipse our memories of him, just as our memories together eclipsed those we loved before we were married. We never completely forget them, but they are not present unless we specifically look for them. It will be the same with him, but it will take time. Understand? I rebelled inside. How could she think that what she did to me could be forgotten or eclipsed? Linda hung her head for a moment and then continued. Well, anyway, I can see what you're thinking if I'm comparing you. Like I said the other day, yes, I compare you and you always win. You were never a sex god, but you were always attentive to me, eager to know what I liked, and did it out of love. I was more than happy with this. I was deeply happy. Mark might be a sex god, but that's the closest I'll ever get. Nothing I've done with him makes me any less content or happy with you. You still win every time. I choose you over Mark. I love you, not Mark. I will repeat this as many times as necessary. Couldn't that calm you down? I shrugged. You can tell that now because Mark was only an option that night. If he or someone like him appears again, how can I be sure that you won't choose him again like you did that night? I don't know. Her face was sad, and that's exactly the problem. Life went on, and besides, I started playing tennis again. It kept my body and mind occupied, and Linda was glad I had a hobby. It was while I was playing tennis that I had to interrupt my game because of a call on my mobile phone. It was Linda, crying inconsolably, "Jim, my mother. She died." Of course, I quickly got dressed, without even taking a shower, and ran home. I took Linda into my arms and tried to console her. Fortunately, the children were outside. My mother-in-law's death was sudden and without any warning and took everyone by surprise. The funeral was a simple but touching ceremony. My father-in-law and mother-in-law were a nice couple, everyone liked me, and I sincerely regretted what happened. However, for some unknown reason, perhaps thinking that Linda's behavior betrayed not only me and our children, but also her parents, I could not contain my anger and, while I was next to my wife, whispered to her. Well, at least she was lucky. She never found out that her daughter was easily accessible, and your father. Who knows, he might even find out. Linda took a step back, looked at me in surprise. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Then she began to cry uncontrollably. All her relatives ran up to console her, clearly thinking that she was crying because of her mother's death. We didn't exchange a word for the rest of the funeral, and then at home she attacked me. How could you do this to me? At my mom's funeral? You have no mercy. Did you feel sorry for me when you committed your treason in front of our friends? At first I snapped, and then changed my tone. It was just a small outburst of anger, but still too early for anything else. Yes, it's true, I'm very sorry, I lost my mind. But at that moment, everything came back to me and... She turned around and ran into the room, and I heard her crying for a long time. I left the house to pick up the kids after school, and when we returned, Linda seemed to have recovered somewhat. Our relationship remained cold for several days, and then returned to normality, if you can call it that. I just increased my tennis training a little, and another St. Patrick's Day passed. Once again, we spent it at home with the children, having fun, and without mentioning that damn day. I never reconciled with my old friends, although I promised Linda that I would someday, and was surprised when I received a call from Dave the next day. A year ago, the whole gang was at Brennan's, but they didn't like the band, so they went back to Morrison's. And who did they see there? You're kidding, right? No, he came right up to our table and chatted for a bit, and then asked where Linda was. By name. Oh shit. Yes, so Dee told him that she decided to stay home that evening. He said it was a pity, but he had good memories of Linda, and hoped she would be with us. Dee said that no one should be sad on St. Patrick's Day and asked if one of us could comfort him. She smiled at him and stuck out her chest. I kicked her under the table, and she kicked me harder. He smiled and said thank you, but he didn't think so and left. Crap. I asked Dee what she thought, and she said she wanted to get him away from Linda, because if Linda got involved with him again, your marriage would be over. I said yes, what about yours if you contact him? And she looked at me and said Linda was her best friend. Things were still tense at our house this morning, but I thought I should warn you. Thanks, I guess. I thought about it. So how do you deal with it knowing your wife wants to spend the night with an asshole? It's different when it happens to you, isn't it? Yeah, well, until that happened, and he didn't seem to buy what she was selling, no matter how she did it. One thing is for sure, we will not be returning to Morrison's again. Well, thanks for the warning, Dave, and good luck. When I got home that night, Linda stuck to me. She seemed almost desperate. I looked at her questioningly, and she whispered, "After lights out." After the kids went to bed, I was too nervous for our usual glass of wine, but she said she wanted her glass, so I poured it. Without saying a word, she handed me a small envelope. I pulled out a simple card and read the typewritten note inside. Dear Linda, I was sorry I didn't see you at Morrison's yesterday. I hope you're not sick. You are a special woman, and I fondly remember our dance and everything that happened after. I would like to meet again soon. I call you. With sincere sympathy. Mark. I forced myself to calm down. My hands were still shaking. I turned the envelope over and saw the name and address of a local florist and the words, Lind from Mark. Where are the flowers? I saw who they were from and was about to throw them away with the card, but then I looked at them. They were so beautiful, really gorgeous and well designed, and I thought about all the love and care that someone had put into them. Cultivation, and I just couldn't. You understand, right? Yes, I understood. She loved flowers and grew them in our yard in the summer. She always cried when they withered, and she had to throw them away. And what did you do? She smiled. I noticed the courier had an engagement ring, so I asked if he could take them home to his wife. Unwanted advances, huh? He said. No problem, she'll definitely like them. Someone spent a lot of money on them. I gave him the flowers, and he gave me the card back. You need to show this to your husband, he said. I didn't think about it, but he was right. What should we do? Burn it in the fireplace? I thought. He called. No. How could he? I didn't give him my last name or phone number. He knows our address because he drove you home, and it's easy to find both the number and last name. How did he find out the address, by the way? Did you enter it into his GPS? No, I dictated it, and he entered it himself. So he knows your number. He will call when I'm not at home. What will happen then? Linda winced. I don't know. I know I don't want him, but I'm afraid. What if I just give in to him, give in without thinking, like last time? It didn't take long for this bastard to show up. He left 2 messages on Linda's answering machine the next day before she blocked his number. We listened to them together that night after the kids went to bed. Hi, Linda. This is Mark. I really want to see you again. Is this a good number to call you? Call me back and let's make an appointment. See you soon. Hi, Linda. It's Mark again. Sorry for calling twice, but I really want to see you again. I think back to that night and the next morning, and I have a feeling that there could be something special between us. I know that you felt it too. You may think that I say this to many, but I really want to get to know you better. I know that you have children, and I would like to meet you. What we did together last time, and I would like to repeat all of this and more, but there is something about you that makes me want to get to know you as a person. I can't explain it, but I know it. That you are married, but we already know that I can give you pleasure in bed better than your husband. You told me this yourself. You know that I can give you and your children a life that your husband cannot even dream of. Linda, you owe it to yourself and your children. You've already taken the first step, and you know you liked it. Take the next one. please call me." I watched the emotions change on Linda's face as the recording played. She shook her head vigorously when Mark talked about how he could give her a better life. "Well," I asked her, "do you think he's serious or just trying to get me into bed again? He already picked you once out of a whole room of women. That feeling of wanting to get to know you better and not just have sex with you is exactly the same as I felt when I first saw you. So yes, I think he might be serious. And then what?" Linda thought about it. "Well, of course it's nice. I know you say things like that all the time, and I know you're sincere, but when someone as experienced as Mark says the same thing, it's different. You already know that the night with him was the greatest sexual thrill of my life. I can't deny it. You have it in writing. If he was so good and you liked his attention, why did you block his number?" I tried to keep my voice normal. She answered without hesitation. She was clearly thinking about it. "This is the price. I see this price every time I look at your face, every time you give me those tender little touches that mean so much to me. I knew when I came home to you that you would be hurt, but I could not imagine that this pain would last so long and be so deep. I did not imagine that the price for just that night would be so high." I was surprised to learn that I too had paid the price. There were things I valued about myself, like being a faithful wife, that are no longer true and never will be. I never thought I'd trade these things for a few thrills, but I did. Driving a Maserati, you get the idea. It was exciting, I can't deny, but the price was higher than I ever imagined and much higher than it was worth. Then there's Emma and Tommy. You were right when you said that I never thought about them and the price they would pay for what I did, but they do too. It occurred to me today that Emma fought harder to protect her friend from bullying than I fought to preserve what I considered the best part of myself. I was weak. I had no character. Now this must change. I certainly don't want to consciously sacrifice what's left of my self-respect for what Mark Lavalier considers a better life. The next day, Mark tried to contact again. An even more expensive bouquet went home by courier, and the note was even more condescending. He said he was sure I made her block his number because he knew I couldn't compete with him. He said that if Linda could honestly tell him that she didn't want what he had to offer her without me interfering, she should call him on this number and tell him so, and he wouldn't bother her anymore. Linda played the recording of her phone conversation with him for me when I got home that night. She didn't scream or get upset. She told him that yes, she enjoyed what they did together. If she tried to deny it, he wouldn't believe her. But she is not interested in further communication with him under any circumstances and would not exchange a single day with her husband for a lifetime with him. He tried to tell her that she wasn't serious. "I meant exactly what I said," she replied firmly. "You have nothing that interests me. I never want to see you, hear from you, or receive anything from you ever again. Now I hope you will keep your word and not bother me again." There was a pause. "Okay, baby, your loss." Linda sighed when the recording ended, and after a few seconds I interrupted her thoughts. "Wouldn't you like to drive your precious Maserati again? What a nice little wife I have." She looked at me strangely and with suspicion that I was mocking her, but I immediately dispelled her doubts with a passionate kiss. Apparently, I did the right thing because she smiled sweetly at me after that, and we had some pretty intense sex that night. 4 years after that fateful day, it was time to put the second part of my plan into action, becoming unemployed. Of course, I couldn't quit my job. I wasn't that stupid. The judge would quickly realize that this was my move to avoid paying alimony to my wife, so I went to talk to the owner of the IT company I worked for. My professional level was high, and I was loved by both colleagues and management. Plus, on my side was the fact that his brother had gone through a nasty divorce due to his wife cheating on him, and he hated those types of women the most. I asked for an interview and was accepted immediately. After I told him the whole situation in detail, he was sincerely sorry for me, but the solution was quite simple. Taking advantage of the temporary crisis in the sector, a reorganization and a slight reduction in personnel were soon to take place. His idea was to fire only those close to retirement age and give everyone a bonus so they could live out their retirement in peace. Among those fired, he would calmly include me, without having to explain it to anyone, and of course, I would not complain. Not to mention that after a year I could still return to work, of course, unofficially, which would bring obvious benefits to both me and the company. Of course, it wasn't entirely legal, but it would have been virtually impossible to detect since I could have been working from home rather than in an office, and only he and I would have known about our working relationship. Even if we were discovered, it would only be a significant administrative penalty, nothing particularly serious. I presented a slightly different version to Linda. After another delicious dinner, and when the children retired to their rooms to watch TV, I said to her, "I thought of something, honey." "Tell me everything," she answered expectantly. "The kids are growing up now, and before they get too big and move away from us, you know how it is, I thought I would like to spend more time with them and, of course, with you too." "Maybe," she said a little surprised, "but how can we do this? Do you have any ideas?" "Actually, yes," I continued, pretending it was just an idea. "I could ask the office for a year off without pay, kind of like a sabbatical year. What do you think?" "But that would be great, but can we do it with the money, and will they give it to you?" "I really don't see any difficulties in this. It won't cost the company anything, and it has happened to other employees, such as women after pregnancy. And don't worry about the money, our account is still good enough to support us for a year, even without a salary." "Well, if that's the case," Linda said with some doubt, "don't worry, I'll talk to the boss tomorrow and see what happens." "Okay, overall, if it's possible, that would be great. More time for us and our kids." "That's right. I will try to convince the boss not to create problems. After all, he owes me for my brilliant work." Of course, everything had already been decided, and from tomorrow I would become unemployed, without the possibility of providing alimony in the event of a divorce. I immediately began devoting all my time to the children. I took them to and from school, helped with homework, often played with them. We laughed and had a great time, went to the movies together, signed up for the pool first, and then asked if they wanted to sign up for tennis courses. They were delighted to accompany me to the club, and when Linda asked if they had a good time there, they answered without hesitation, "It's great. There are a lot of classmates there and very good teachers and instructors." Besides Dad, I became their best friend. They felt my love and reciprocated my love. Linda did not seem to notice that she was gradually becoming more and more excluded from our contact and our closeness and intimacy, or at least did not show it. Perhaps she didn't ask too many questions, glad that everything was back to normal, with smiles, caresses, intimacy, and carelessness, as if all the horrors that had marred our marriage had been erased in one fell swoop. About 3 months into my sabbatical year, after a sex session that was unforeseen for Linda, but carefully planned by me, while we were casually relaxing, I said to her, "You know, honey, yesterday at the tennis club, I spoke with a real estate agent who gave me a great idea on how to get a lot of money for next to nothing." "Nobody gives money for free," she answered with a smile. "Of course, I know that too, but there is a way that will allow us to get a decent amount of money, which will be very useful until I return to work." "It's not something illegal, right?" "Absolutely not. What are you saying? Don't you know me yet? I would never do anything illegal or immoral, unlike some." The hint of her immorality escaped me before I realized it, and I immediately regretted it, but fortunately, she apparently did not notice because she did not show it. "What is it about?" "The real estate agent told me that you can sell the house without selling it." "Sell a house?" Now she raised her voice a little, surprised. "What do you mean, selling it but not selling it?" "That's how it is. There is a formula that will allow us to stay in our home while making a lot of money. It's called bare ownership and involves selling the title to a house with the understanding that the owner will only take full ownership when we no longer live there. Of course, the house will be sold at a price below its real value, but as long as we live here, it will remain ours. How do you like it?" He also said that if we decided to do this, he would handle all the paperwork and was confident that he would find a good buyer right away. Linda looked a little hesitant, but didn't want to ruin my ideas. Apparently, she still had a lot to atone for, and she knew it very well. But I don't know, I don't really understand this. Isn't there a risk that we will be evicted later? Absolutely not. It will be written down. As long as we live in this house, it will remain ours in every way. I didn't try too hard to convince her completely, and there was actually a real estate agent at the tennis club who I approached. He had a very good agency, and within a month he found a couple interested in buying using this formula. Our signing of the 4 parties in front of the notary was a mere formality. Part of the agreed amount, of course, not too large in order to avoid possible checks, was transferred to my encrypted account, and the rest gradually went towards ordinary expenses, dinners, electronic devices, rather expensive vacations, etc. By the end of the Sabbath year, our account was practically empty. Tommy and Emma were now 9 and 11 years old, respectively. Still small, but old enough to understand and bear the bitter truth about their mother. The time has come when all sins return to normal. Linda's birthday was approaching, and 10 days before it, as we sat quietly on the couch relaxing, I said to her, "Your birthday is coming up." Yes, how time flies. I can't give you a surprise this year, but I have to tell you what kind of gift I have prepared. Why? What is it about? She asked, beaming with a smile, anticipating the continuation. I've already booked a week-long mini-cruise to Miami and the Bahamas. You better start packing your bags because we're leaving in 3 days. No, she exclaimed, standing up to hug and kiss me. But can we afford it? Of course, I've already thought about everything. Emma and Tommy will be taking part in a week-long tennis camp at Federal Center, and they will have a blast while we enjoy our holiday. Incredible, I have no words. Since childhood, I have always dreamed of going on a cruise, and now it is becoming a reality. What a wonderful gift you gave me, dear. Thank you very much. She kissed me on the lips. When we parted, I continued, "And that's not all, dear. I thought that after such a long time, the time had come for me to reconcile with your friends, or rather with our friends, and for the evening of our return, I had already organized a dinner and dance. Will you handle notifying them?" And before she could recover from her surprise, I added, "Of course we won't go to Morrison's." A fleeting shadow of sadness appeared on Linda's face, immediately replaced by an expression of joy, both for my benefit and for hers, and ignoring what I had said, she thanked me. "You are wonderful, dear. I so hoped that sooner or later you would come to this. You have no idea how happy I am. I'll start calling right away." It was a wonderful cruise. On the beach during the day, and in the evenings there were dinners and entertainment on the ship, and when we had the energy, sometimes sessions of satisfying sex. The week flew by in a flash, and when we returned to shore, dinner was waiting for us with our old friends. The place I chose also had a few rooms on the second floor, mostly used by hot couples for a night of love after dancing, and I booked one room not for the night, but to freshen up after the trip and change into suitable clothes for the evening. Linda went first to shower and then change clothes, while it was my turn to stand under the running water. When I got out of the shower and returned to the room, I saw her. She was wearing a beautiful red dress. It was one of my favorite dresses and flattered her figure almost as much as the blue one. With a radiant smile on her face, she seemed beautiful to me again, but not as much as before. A few small wrinkles that love could have made invisible began to visibly erase her youth, and the slightly sparkling eyes that would have excited me before now left me indifferent. In any case, I could not do without compliments. "You are beautiful, dear, a real charm." "I can't kiss you so as not to ruin my makeup, but consider it already done," she replied. "I'll make it up to you at night after the dance," she continued, winking at me and blushing slightly. I changed my clothes too, and we went into the hall, holding hands. After some time, punctually at the agreed time, Dave, Phil, and Jane arrived almost simultaneously, and then 2 more pairs of friends. There were only 10 of us. We greeted each other warmly, especially me, and sat down at our table. The dinner was good, and after the initial awkwardness, our conversation was pleasant and smooth. Everyone had a lot to say about the events that had happened during this long period of absence. When it was over, we got up and went to the dance hall. At first it was awkward. Linda's every action and look tried to show me that she was mine and only mine and would remain so. It's a pity that the little voice in my head reminded me that this was the case that night. Several men asked her to dance, but she refused all invitations, and after several dances we were sitting at our table when a girl appeared in the hall. We noticed her because several heads turned to look at her. A beautiful blonde with simple yet elegant manners, a slender body with curves in the right places, a toned and athletic figure, almost certainly an athlete. A cute and beautiful face with a slight tan, cute dimples, and somewhat intriguing freckles that made her even more interesting. Her dazzling smile along with her beautiful eyes were a reflection of a soul that few could compare. She was wearing a gorgeous blue dress. This is like my dress, Linda said, eyes wide open, breaking the silence. It's not like yours, it's really yours, and it looks much better on her than on you, doesn't it? I told her. Before our friends could say a word about my obviously disrespectful comment to Linda, which had never happened before, a beautiful girl walked up to our table and, speaking charmingly to me, asked, "Can I ask you to dance?" "Of course, right, dear," I said, grinning at my wife. Getting up, I took the girl by the hand and we headed to the center of the hall, mingling with the dancers. "What's happening?" Dee said, expressing everyone's thoughts. Linda was almost paralyzed with surprise. Her face, until now happy and relaxed, began to distort with anxiety. "I don't know, I don't understand. Is he still thinking about that day and wants revenge? Is this really possible in 5 years?" Her forehead was now wrinkled a little, and a tear appeared at the corner of her eye. "Okay, if that's the case, I deserve it. Even if it hurts, I can withstand this humiliation, and to end this once and for all, I'm ready to do anything." After 2 dances, which seemed like an eternity for our table, we returned to them, and, addressing everyone, paying a little more attention to Linda, I began, "Let me introduce Ellen. She's my doubles tennis partner at the club and Emma and Tommy's teacher." I paused for a moment, then continued, "She is also my life partner for a year now, and we will get married as soon as the divorce is finalized." I met Ellen during the kids' tennis practice, and we hit it off immediately. After a few months, our trust became so great that I told her everything, and she was outraged by Linda's behavior because she felt the same way as I did about the betrayal. She immediately agreed to my plan of revenge, and when we became close, her love for me was so strong that she was willing to tolerate my periodic intimate relations with my wife so that she would not suspect anything, even so that she would believe in complete reconciliation and a happy marriage. Everyone's eyes were wide open in surprise, and their mouths too. They did not utter a word. "Raw divorce?" Linda muttered, stunned. "What kind of scam? Have you been cheating on me for a whole year? Coward." "Changed? Don't make me laugh, you're trash. You're the one who cheated on me 5 years ago by humiliating me in front of all our friends and treating me like trash. I didn't cheat on you because our marriage ended the moment you left me for Mark, even though it wasn't yet documented like our divorce would soon be," I said, smiling at her and taking the yellow envelope out of my pocket. Placing it on the table, I continued, "You received a summons in front of witnesses, Linda. Here are the documents, and regardless of whether you sign them or not, the divorce will still go through. I advise you to sign so as not to prolong the agony. I was fair. Even though I filed for divorce on the grounds of your fault, you will receive half of our joint bill, which is exactly $217. "What? What about the rest of the money?" Linda found the strength to say. "What are the others? Our account has been used for several years only to pay bills and expenses for children. Haven't you noticed? But let me continue, please." "No, no," Linda screamed, falling to her knees in front of me. "Please, I don't want a divorce. Don't leave me, please. You abandoned me 5 years ago, like trash. You should have thought about it that day, honey, and you know what I'm talking about. No, you never forgave that mistake of mine, did you?" "Error? It's too convenient to call it a mistake. It was a conscious and fully conscious choice. Remember how I said I'd make you pay for this? You should have trusted my words like I trusted you. Finally, I could give vent to the anger that I had been suppressing for 5 years. As for alimony, don't count on it, because I've been fired for a year now. How? Fired? You said you were taking a sabbatical year. I said that so you wouldn't worry, honey, I chuckled. I'm actually unemployed. As for the house, it has been occupied by new owners since yesterday. All our things are in the basement, and we have a week to get them out of there. In the envelope, you will find the address and keys to the basement. New owners? Linda was stunned and shocked. Of course, remember we sold it? But it was supposed to be ours. While we lived there, Linda stammered. True, but as of last month, I no longer live there. I am registered in Ellen's house, and the contract says that the house will be ours as long as we both live there. So the house is no longer ours. Linda was desperate. No home, very little money, no job, and no child support. How can she live now? Please, Jim, what should I do? You never forgave me, did you? No, I never forgave you, and it's not my problem how you will live after me. Maybe turn to your beloved Mark, because you had sex with him with pleasure. Treason? Yes, but not only that. Perhaps I could forgive it, but the way you humiliated me made my love for you disappear in an instant. How can I love a person who treats me like a doormat, humiliates me in front of my friends, doesn't consider my feelings and trauma, doesn't care about what might happen to the children's because of your actions, doesn't think about everything and everyone for the sake of to feel chosen by the famous Mr. Lavalier? You can't seriously think that anyone would tolerate this, and if you do, I'm not crazy. Maybe you. I continued without stopping. He took you home in a limousine so that all the neighbors could see that my wife was with him. And you didn't say a word against it, you kissed him in public. You enjoyed the fact that everyone knew you slept with Big Mark, didn't you? And humiliated me in front of everyone like a cuckold. No, that's not true. I didn't want to hurt you. He was the one who wanted to give me a ride. I wasn't thinking about the neighbors or being seen. Linda said all this in one breath, albeit with a trembling voice. Shut up, bitch. I might as well put up a sign with big letters. I never thought such a despicable creature could exist, but I can finally get rid of it. Linda sobbed inconsolably, and everyone around was shocked and surprised by the cruelty of my words. But I wasn't done yet and said, by the way, I have something for you too, Dee, pulling out another envelope. Remember your friend Jenny's bachelorette party? Dee immediately turned pale, and I continued, grinning. Remember how you had sex with that dancer? If you don't remember, here are some good photos to refresh your memory. Of course, I had to spend a little money on a private detective to follow you when you went out without your husband, but it was worth it, don't you think? Dave grabbed the envelope hastily, and before looking inside, he stood up and hit Dee hard in the face, causing her head to turn to the side. Then he opened the envelope and, with a quick glance, stood up and left for the exit. Dee was now sobbing in despair, realizing that her marriage was also over. My divorce went pretty quickly. The second-rate lawyer, obtained from one of the low-quality feminist organizations that Linda approached, could do little to oppose my plan, and even the judge's hands were tied, although it seemed to me that he showed little sympathy for the cheater. He couldn't find money where there was none. The contract for the sale of the house was completely legal. I never withdrew suspicious amounts of money from the account. We were both unemployed, and child support was excluded. As for the children, without a home, and with a letter in which Linda admitted to cheating and publicly humiliating her husband, Linda lost the case, and they were given to me so that I could place them in my partner's house. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. Linda suffered a severe nervous breakdown and spent 2 months in the hospital. I decided not to say anything to the children. It was better for them not to know. Her periodic visits with the children, which the judge allowed, turned out to be a complete failure. Emma and Tommy always refused to go out with her, screaming, crying, and trying to kick her, and they always ended up locking themselves in their room, refusing to come out while Linda was home. The anger her children felt towards her and the distance between them was a hateful gap that caused Linda real physical pain. On a couple of occasions, she was accompanied by a social worker who only observed routine scenes that could eventually be confirmed in front of a judge. After several months of unsuccessful attempts, Linda finally gave up and never came to the house or tried to go out with them. About 2 years passed before Emma and Tommy practically forgot about Linda completely. Now Ellen became their mother, who loved them like her own children, and they understood this and reciprocated her. Linda never fully recovered. I learned that she had been taken in by Jane and Phil for some time because her father, an old-school man with strict moral principles, had disowned her after receiving a letter from me explaining the reasons for the divorce and a letter from Linda. Her dear friend Dee had her own problems, and Dave eventually divorced her. For a time, Linda worked as a waitress on the outskirts of town, but her nervous breakdown made her short-tempered and unpleasant, unable to deal well with customers, and she was fired. In order to survive, I learned that she was forced to become the street girl she showed herself to be. I don't know how long she can continue because the old, easily accessible girls are not very successful. Was I too cruel? I would say no. I was a good person before, but she treated me like a piece of crap, trampled my feelings worse than a doormat, humiliated me cruelly, and considered me worthless. I had every right to do the same. And in any case, I have always believed that those who do evil must pay for it, and that traitors, vile and disgusting people who take advantage of the kindness and weakness of others are bastards who create irreversible damage without thinking about all the harm caused, regardless of the sadness, pain, anger, humiliation, frustration, fear, and trauma inflicted on the betrayed person. Such people cannot be forgiven and are a harm to the entire society. Revenge on my bitch ex-wife was a dish that had to be put on hold, but then again, don't they say that revenge is a dish best served cold? Fortunately, I believe that not all women are like this, and I am confident that my wonderful new partner, who put up with me while remaining intimate with my wife for so long, is one of the good ones. A happy life awaits us together. Does February suck? Maybe not so much after all this. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. 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 Click to the next one.